He didn't just humiliate his wife in front of 400 elite guests. He did it with his mistress smiling beside him. Moments later, a helicopter landed, and every laugh died instantly. The champagne was still fizzing in the crystal flutes when Alex Hartwell made the biggest mistake of his life. He didn't just humiliate his wife in front of 400 guests at the Hartwell Industries annual gala. He did it with his mistress standing 3 feet away, smirking in a dress that cost more than most people's cars. Vanessa stood there, frozen, as her husband of 7 years called her a charity case he had grown tired of feeding. The crowd laughed. Fiona, his mistress, laughed the loudest. But what Alex didn't know, what nobody in that glittering ballroom knew, was that Vanessa's maiden name wasn't just Collins. It was Collins, as in Collins Aerospace. Collins as in the family that owned the skies. And in exactly 47 minutes, her brother's helicopter would land on the manicured lawn outside, and the man who thought he owned everything would learn he was nothing but a tenant in someone else's empire. This is the story of how a billionaire destroyed himself with his own arrogance, and how the wife he threw away became the architect of his complete annihilation. The Hartwell penthouse occupied the entire 87th floor of the Obsidian Tower in Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view that made even jaded New Yorkers pause. The Statue of Liberty looked like a toy from up here. Central Park was a green smudge in the distance. Vanessa stood in the master bathroom, her reflection staring back at her with tired eyes. She was 31 years old, but this morning she felt 60. The Cartier diamonds around her neck were cold against her skin. The Valentino gown hanging on the door cost $47,000. She hated every thread of it. "Vanessa!" Alex's voice cut through the penthouse like a blade. "The stylist is here. Stop wasting time." She didn't respond. She had learned over 7 years of marriage that responding only made things worse. The bathroom door swung open without a knock. Alex Hartwell filled the doorway, 6'2", shoulders that still remembered his college rowing days, a jawline that had graced the cover of Forbes twice. He was wearing a Tom Ford tuxedo, custom-fitted charcoal black. His cufflinks were platinum, engraved with the Hartwell family crest. He looked at his wife the way a man looks at a stain on an expensive rug. "You're not even dressed yet?" His voice carried that particular brand of contempt he had perfected over the years. "The gala starts in 4 hours. I need you camera ready in 2. I don't care what you were doing." He checked his Patek Philippe. "Margot is waiting in the dressing room. Wear the emerald earrings, not the sapphires. The sapphires wash you out. And for God's sake, do something about your face. You look exhausted." Vanessa's hand instinctively moved to her cheek. She had been exhausted. She had been exhausted for 7 years. "Alex, I was thinking maybe tonight I could say a few words during your speech. You know about the children's hospital wing we're funding? I helped design the..." The laugh that escaped Alex's throat was sharp enough to cut glass. "You? Give a speech?" He stepped closer, and Vanessa instinctively stepped back until her spine pressed against the cold marble counter. "Sweetheart, do you remember what happened at the Henderson dinner? You couldn't even make small talk without embarrassing me. You called his wife by the wrong name, twice. That was 4 years ago, and I was nervous because you told me not to. I told you not to speak because I knew you'd mess it up. And you did." He straightened his cufflinks, not even looking at her anymore. "Tonight is important. The Concord Media acquisition is hanging by a thread. I need investors confident in my leadership, not distracted by my wife fumbling through index cards." "I wouldn't fumble. I've been practicing." "Vanessa." His voice dropped to that low, dangerous register that always made her stomach clench. "Your job tonight is simple. Stand beside me, smile. Look pretty enough that people don't question why I married you. Can you manage that? Or is that also too complicated?" She felt the familiar burn behind her eyes but forced it down. She would not cry. Not again. Not anymore. "I can manage that," she whispered. "Good." He was already walking away. "Oh, and Fiona will be there tonight. She's handling the PR for the event." The name landed like a slap. Fiona Price, 26 years old, legs that went on forever, a smile that promised everything and delivered nothing but chaos. She had started as a junior publicist at Hartwell Industries 18 months ago. Now she was the senior vice president of communications. Everyone knew how she got the promotion. Everyone except, apparently, the board of directors who signed off on it. Fiona, Vanessa repeated, her voice flat. Your mistress is coming to our company gala. Alex paused at the door. He didn't deny it. He hadn't denied it in months. She's an employee, Vanessa, a valuable one. Her work on the Meridian campaign increased our media coverage by 340%. He glanced back over his shoulder, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes. It might have been guilt. It might have been annoyance at having to explain himself. Don't make this awkward. I have enough to deal with tonight without managing your insecurities. He left. Vanessa stood alone in the bathroom that cost more than most houses. The diamonds around her neck felt like a collar. The penthouse felt like a cage. She reached for her phone, not the iPhone Alex had given her, the one he monitored, but the old flip phone she kept hidden in a tampon box under the sink. The one he didn't know about. She had one contact saved, just one. She stared at the number for a long moment, her thumb hovering over the call button. Not yet, she told herself. Not yet. She put the phone away and went to meet the stylist. Margot Chen had been styling Manhattan's elite for 23 years. She had dressed senators' wives, tech billionaires' girlfriends, and once, memorably, a European princess who threw a shoe at her head for suggesting a lower hemline. But in all her years, she had never seen anyone wear defeat quite like Vanessa Hartwell. Arms up, darling, Margot murmured, sliding the Valentino gown over Vanessa's slender frame. The fabric was exquisite, hand-sewn Italian silk in a deep burgundy that should have made Vanessa glow. Instead, she looked like she was drowning in it. Mr. Hartwell selected this one? Margot asked carefully. He selected all of them. Vanessa's voice was distant, disconnected. He has them sent from the designer directly. I don't even see them until the night of the event. Margot's hands paused on the zipper. In her experience, women who didn't choose their own clothes were women who didn't choose much of anything anymore. It's beautiful, Margot said, because that was her job. But you know what would be even more stunning? The midnight blue Ely Saab in your closet, the one with the shoulder detail. It would bring out your eyes. Vanessa shook her head, a small automatic gesture. Alex doesn't like blue on me. He says it makes me look sad. Margot wanted to say that Alex Hartwell was a colossal ass, and that Vanessa looked sad in every color because sadness had seeped into her bones. But she had bills to pay and a reputation to maintain. Well, Margot said, zipping the gown with practiced efficiency, let's make this work then. She guided Vanessa to the vanity and began working on her hair. The penthouse dressing room was larger than Margot's entire apartment. Mirrors everywhere. Lighting that could be adjusted to simulate any environment from harsh paparazzi flash to soft candlelight. A temperature-controlled closet held hundreds of thousands of dollars in clothing. Jewelry was displayed in glass cases like museum exhibits. And yet, for all its luxury, the room felt cold, sterile, like a display case for a woman who had become a mannequin. Mrs. Hartwell, Margot said softly, meeting Vanessa's eyes in the mirror. May I say something? Off the record? Vanessa's gaze sharpened slightly, a flicker of the person she used to be. Of course. Margot leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. I've dressed a lot of women in this city. Happy ones, miserable ones, powerful ones, broken ones. I've learned to read faces better than most therapists. She paused, brush hovering over Vanessa's hair. Whatever you're planning, and I know you're planning something, because I see it in your eyes. I hope it's spectacular. Some men need to be taught a lesson. Some lessons need an audience. Vanessa stared at her reflection for a long moment. Then slowly the ghost of a smile crossed her face. It was small. It was sad. But it was there. Margot, she said quietly, I'm not planning anything. I'm just trying to survive. Margot nodded, returning to her work. But she didn't believe it. She had been in this business too long. Something was coming. She could feel it in the air, that electric charge before a storm. At precisely 4:47 p.m., while Margot was in the closet selecting backup accessories, Vanessa excused herself to the bathroom. She retrieved the flip phone from its hiding place. Her thumb moved to the single saved contact. The name simply read, E. The phone rang twice before a male voice answered. Little V. The childhood nickname hit her like a wave of warm water. Her eyes closed. Her shoulders dropped. For the first time all day, she took a full breath. Elijah, I was wondering when you'd call. Her brother's voice was calm, measured, but she could hear the undercurrent of concern. Mom said you sounded strange at Christmas. Dad's been pacing for months, and I've been watching. Watching? Vanessa, I run a private security firm. Watching is literally what I do. A pause. I know about Fiona Price. I know about the accounts he's been hiding. I know about the prenup he tricked you into signing when you were 24 and didn't know any better. I know everything. Her grip tightened on the phone. If you knew, why didn't you? Because you asked us to stay out of it. 7 years ago, you said you loved him. You said you wanted to build your own life without the family name. You said, I know what I said. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. Silence on the line. Then, what do you need? Vanessa looked at herself in the mirror. The burgundy gown, the Cartier diamonds, the hollow eyes of a woman who had forgotten who she was. There's a gala tonight, Hartwell Industries annual benefit. 400 guests, press, cameras. She took a breath. He's going to humiliate me, Eli. I can feel it coming. He's been building to something for weeks. The comments are getting worse. He barely hides Fiona anymore. Tonight, in front of everyone, he's going to end it. Make it public. Make me the villain somehow. Paint himself as the long-suffering husband, finally freeing himself. He's been planting stories in the press for months. I've seen the drafts. What drafts? Fiona's computer. She left it unlocked at a dinner last month. I only had 30 seconds, but I saw enough. Headlines ready to go. Sources close to the couple say Vanessa has struggled with emotional instability. Alex Hartwell's dedication to his troubled wife reaches breaking point. Her voice hardened. He's not just leaving me, Eli. He's going to destroy my reputation first, so I can't fight back. Another pause, longer this time. What time does this gala start? 8 p.m., the Pierre Hotel, Grand Ballroom. And when do you think he'll make his move? Vanessa calculated. Alex was theatrical. He would want maximum impact. During his speech, around 9:30. That's when the cameras are rolling. That's when all eyes are on him. Then I'll be there at 9:25. Her heart stopped. Eli, no, you can't just show up. He doesn't know who my family is. Nobody does. I never told him. If you come in there, little V, his voice was gentle but immovable, you've been protecting that man from our family for 7 years. You've been protecting him from the consequences of his own actions because you thought love meant sacrifice. But love doesn't mean disappearing. Love doesn't mean letting someone erase you. I know, but I'm not coming to cause a scene. I'm coming to make sure you have a choice. Because right now, the way things are going, he's going to take even that away from you. Vanessa felt tears sliding down her cheeks, ruining the makeup Margot had so carefully applied. She didn't care. He's going to be so angry. Good. Elijah's voice carried 7 years of restrained fury. He should have thought about that before he touched what's ours. The Collins family doesn't forget, Vanessa, and we don't forgive. Not for this. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. A pause, but first I need you to do something for me. Anything. When it happens, when he starts his little performance, I need you to stand tall. Don't cry. Don't beg. Don't give him the satisfaction. You are Vanessa Marie Collins. Your great-grandfather built aircraft for the Allied forces. Your grandmother negotiated with 3 presidents. Your mother could buy his entire company with her personal savings account. I don't feel like any of that anymore. I know. That's what 7 years with a parasite does to a person. But tonight, just for 1 hour, I need you to remember who you were before him. Can you do that? Vanessa wiped her eyes. In the mirror, she saw a woman she barely recognized. But beneath the exhaustion, beneath the defeat, something else was stirring. Yes. Good. I'll see you at 9:25. And Vanessa? Yes? Wear the blue dress, the one Mom gave you for your 25th birthday, the one you've never worn because he said it made you look sad. How do you know about... Little sister, I know everything. It's my job. A hint of warmth entered his voice. Tonight, you're going to look like the queen you've always been. And that man is going to realize he's been sleeping next to royalty and treating her like a servant. The line went dead. Vanessa stared at the phone for a long moment. Then she opened the bathroom door. Margot? The stylist appeared instantly. Yes, Mrs. Hartwell? Change of plans. Vanessa's voice was steady for the first time all day. Get me the blue Ely Saab, the one with the shoulder detail. Margot's eyebrows rose. But Mr. Hartwell said, I know what he said. Vanessa met her eyes in the mirror. I'm done listening. A slow smile spread across Margot's face, the kind of smile that said she had been waiting for this moment. Right away, Mrs. Hartwell. Right away. The Pierre Hotel had seen presidents, kings, and celebrities walk through its gilded doors. Tonight, it was transformed into a temple of wealth and ambition for the Hartwell Industries annual benefit gala. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the entrance, flanked by photographers whose cameras flashed like lightning in a bottle. Town cars and limousines queued along 61st Street, each one disgorging another perfectly polished member of Manhattan's elite. Alex Hartwell's Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up at precisely 7:58 p.m. He stepped out first, offering a practiced smile to the cameras. His Tom Ford tuxedo fit like a second skin. His Patek Philippe caught the light. He looked like a man who owned the world. Then he turned to help his wife from the car, and his smile flickered. Vanessa emerged in midnight blue. The Elie Saab gown caught the light like liquid sapphire, the delicate beading along the shoulders creating an almost ethereal effect. Her hair was swept up, exposing her neck. She wore no diamonds tonight, just a simple pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. She looked, for the first time in years, like herself. What the hell are you wearing? Alex hissed through his smile, gripping her elbow hard enough to bruise. I told you the burgundy Valentino. You did, Vanessa agreed, her voice calm. I chose differently. You chose. He stopped himself, aware of the cameras. His smile locked back into place, but his eyes were ice. We'll discuss this later. I'm sure we will. They walked the red carpet in practiced lockstep, pausing for photos, Alex's hand possessively on her waist. To the cameras, they were the perfect power couple, Manhattan royalty. Only Vanessa could feel the trembling rage in his grip. Inside the grand ballroom, 400 of New York's most influential people mingled beneath crystal chandeliers that had witnessed a century of secrets. Waiters circulated with champagne and caviar. A string quartet played something elegant and forgettable. The air smelled of expensive perfume and barely concealed desperation. Alex, Vanessa, over here. Theodore Winston, the 73-year-old chairman of Concord Media, waved them over with a champagne flute. His wife, a former model half his age, stood beside him looking magnificently bored. Alex transformed instantly, becoming the charming titan of industry the world expected. Theodore, so glad you could make it. How's the yacht? Still debating between Sardinia and Monaco for the summer? Monaco, I think. Less crowded. Theodore's eyes lingered on Vanessa. Mrs. Hartwell, you look absolutely stunning tonight. That color suits you. Doesn't it suit her, Alex? Alex's jaw tightened imperceptibly. She does look lovely, though I must confess, I preferred the gown we had selected. Vanessa tends to second-guess my choices. It's become something of a habit. The subtle dig landed. Theodore raised an eyebrow. His wife smirked. Vanessa felt the familiar flush of humiliation creeping up her neck. This was his art, making her look foolish in ways that were technically deniable. Oh, I wasn't criticizing. I was just observing. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, she thought of Elijah's voice. Stand tall. Don't cry. Don't beg. Actually, Vanessa said, her voice carrying clearly, Alex was quite right to prefer the Valentino. It was beautiful. But my mother always said that blue was my color. And tonight, I wanted to feel like myself. A simple statement, a nothing statement, but it was the first time in 7 years she had contradicted him in public. Alex's smile didn't waver, but his grip on her arm tightened to the point of pain. If you'll excuse us, Theodore, I see the governor arriving. Vanessa, come. He steered her away, not toward the governor, but toward a quiet corner near the service entrance. What the fuck are you doing? His voice was a serrated whisper. Did you take something? Are you drunk? Because the Vanessa I know doesn't suddenly develop a spine in the middle of my most important event. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. He stared at her as if she had sprouted a second head. Listen to me very carefully, Vanessa. Tonight determines whether the Concord deal closes. If it does, I become the youngest media mogul in the country. If it doesn't, he leaned closer, his breath hot on her cheek. If it doesn't, I will make your life so miserable, you'll beg me for the divorce. Maybe I already want the divorce. The words escaped before she could stop them. For a moment, Alex just blinked. Then he laughed, a cold, incredulous sound that drew glances from nearby guests. You want a divorce? He was genuinely amused now. With what money? What connections? What skills? He ticked off each point on his manicured fingers. You dropped out of college to support me. You have no career, no friends. I made sure of that. Your family barely exists as far as anyone knows. Some middle-class nobodies from Wisconsin or wherever. Connecticut. Same thing. He smoothed his lapels, composure regained. Face reality, sweetheart. Without me, you're nothing. A nobody with a 10-year gap in her resume and a closet full of clothes she can't afford. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to smile. You're going to stand beside me. And you're going to watch me ascend to the top of this city while you play your part as the grateful wife. He started to turn away. And if I don't? He paused, looked back. His eyes were flat, reptilian. If you don't, the prenup makes sure you leave with nothing. Literally nothing. Not the clothes, not the jewelry, nothing but the suitcase you brought when we got married. A cruel smile. And we both know that suitcase was mostly empty. He walked away, leaving her standing alone in the shadows. Vanessa reached into her clutch and checked the time on her hidden phone. 8:47 p.m. 38 minutes. Fiona Price arrived at precisely 9 p.m., fashionably late, in a way that was clearly calculated to draw maximum attention. She wore red. Of course she wore red. A Dolce & Gabbana number that left little to the imagination and everything to the tabloids. Her blonde hair cascaded in waves that had taken a professional team 3 hours to achieve. Her lips matched her dress, a scarlet pout designed to make men stupid and women furious. She made her entrance just as the string quartet was shifting into something more modern, drawing every eye in the room. "Darling!" She glided toward Alex with the confidence of a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. The traffic was absolutely murderous. "I do hope I haven't missed anything important." She kissed him on both cheeks, a gesture of European sophistication she had picked up from a YouTube tutorial, letting her lips linger just a moment too long. Vanessa watched from across the room. She watched her husband's hand settle on Fiona's lower back. She watched Fiona lean into him, laughing at something he said. She watched the guests watching them, their faces a mixture of pity and schadenfreude. The poor wife. Doesn't she know? Of course she knows. How could she not know? Something cold settled in Vanessa's chest. Not anger. She was past anger. Not sadness. She had exhausted her reserves of sadness years ago. It was clarity, pure, crystalline clarity. She finally understood what she had been too blind to see. Alex didn't love Fiona. He didn't love anyone. Fiona was a prop, just like Vanessa was. A younger, shinier prop to be displayed when the old one grew dull. In 5 years, maybe 10, he would discard Fiona too. There would be another girl, another upgrade, another cycle of charm and cruelty. Some men didn't have relationships. They had acquisitions. "Mrs. Hartwell?" Vanessa turned. A waiter stood beside her, tray extended. "Champagne?" She took a glass. "Thank you." "Of course." The waiter hesitated. "If I may say, ma'am, you look beautiful tonight. Really beautiful." Vanessa blinked. It had been so long since anyone had given her a compliment that wasn't designed to manipulate. "Thank you. That's very kind." The waiter moved on. Vanessa sipped her champagne and watched her husband parade his mistress through the crowd like a prize. 9:14 p.m., 11 minutes. At 9:20 p.m., the lights dimmed. A spotlight illuminated the stage at the far end of the ballroom. Alex Hartwell climbed the steps with the ease of a man who had been walking toward power his whole life. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice rich and commanding through the microphone, "thank you for joining us tonight for the 7th annual Hartwell Industries Benefit Gala. Your generosity never ceases to amaze me. Last year, we raised over $12 million for children's hospitals across the tri-state area. This year, I'm confident we'll exceed that." Polite applause. Champagne flutes raised. Vanessa stood at the back of the crowd, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could feel the speech building toward something. Alex had that look in his eye, the one he got before closing a deal, before delivering a kill shot. But tonight isn't just about charity, Alex continued. Tonight is about celebrating what makes Hartwell Industries great. Our team, our vision, our commitment to excellence. He paused, letting the moment breathe. And of course, the people who stand beside us through it all. His eyes found Vanessa in the crowd. The spotlight shifted, finding her, illuminating her in the back of the room. Would my wife Vanessa please join me on stage? The crowd parted. 400 faces turned toward her. Cameras swung in her direction. Stand tall. Don't cry. Don't beg. Vanessa walked forward. Each step felt like miles. The blue dress caught the light. The pearls at her throat seemed to glow. She climbed the stage and stood beside her husband. Alex took her hand, that possessive grip again, and faced the crowd. 7 years ago, I married this woman. She was young. She was sweet. She believed in me when I was still building this company from the ground up. His voice dripped with manufactured nostalgia. She's been beside me through every triumph, every challenge, every late night. Vanessa felt the trap closing. She could hear the but coming. But marriage? There it was. Like business, must evolve. And sometimes evolution means recognizing when a chapter has ended. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cameras clicked frantically. Recently, I've done a lot of soul searching. I've asked myself what kind of leader I want to be. What kind of man? Alex turned to face Vanessa directly, his expression a masterwork of false sympathy. And I've realized that I haven't been fair to you, Vanessa. I've kept you in a role you were never suited for. I've watched you struggle with the pressures of this life. Alex, Vanessa whispered, don't do this. And I've enabled that struggle by not being honest with you, with myself. He raised his voice for the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to announce tonight that Vanessa and I have mutually decided to end our marriage. The gasp that swept through the room was audible. Mutually? Vanessa's voice came out stronger than she expected. Alex's eyes flashed a warning. Yes, mutually. It's time for us both to find our own paths. And I hope you'll all join me in wishing Vanessa well as she begins her new chapter, whatever that may look like. The subtext was clear to everyone. She has nothing. She'll be nothing. Feel sorry for her, but not too sorry. Fiona had somehow materialized at the foot of the stage, her red dress a beacon, her smile barely contained. Now, Alex continued, turning back to the crowd, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the incredible team that makes Hartwell Industries what it is, and particularly our Senior Vice President of Communications, who has transformed our public profile over the past 18 months. Fiona Price, would you come up here? No, he wasn't. He was. Fiona climbed the stage with predatory grace, taking her place on Alex's other side. She didn't look at Vanessa. She didn't need to. Her presence was statement enough. Fiona has been instrumental in positioning Hartwell Industries for its next phase of growth, Alex said. Her vision, her dedication, her 26-year-old body, her willingness to do whatever it takes. Her invaluable contributions cannot be overstated. I'm so grateful to have her on our team. He was still holding Vanessa's hand. He was holding Fiona's too. Wife and mistress displayed like trophies, while he announced one's disposal and the other's promotion. This was it, the final humiliation, the killing blow. Vanessa felt something inside her crack. 7 years of silence, 7 years of smiling through insults, of explaining away bruises, of pretending the other women didn't exist. 7 years of shrinking herself down to fit into the tiny box he had built for her. She thought of her mother who could negotiate with presidents. She thought of her grandmother who had survived the Depression with her dignity intact. She thought of Elijah who was coming. She thought of who she used to be. And for the first time in 7 years, Vanessa Collins decided to stop pretending. Actually, she said, her voice clear and strong, cutting through the amplified silence, there's nothing mutual about this. Alex's grip on her hand turned crushing. Vanessa, 400 guests deserve the truth, don't you think? She pulled her hand free, stepping forward toward the microphone. My husband isn't leaving me because we've outgrown apart. He's leaving me because he's been sleeping with Fiona Price for 18 months, and he's finally ready to make it official. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed like a strobe. Fiona's perfectly composed face cracked for just a moment, revealing shock beneath. Vanessa! Alex's voice was a whip crack. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? I think I'm finally being honest. Something you've never allowed me to be. She turned to face him, and her eyes were blazing. You want to announce our divorce? Fine. Let's announce it properly. Let's tell them how you've controlled every aspect of my life for 7 years. How you isolated me from my friends, my family. She's having a breakdown, Alex said to the crowd, trying to reclaim the narrative. This is exactly what I was talking about. The pressure has been too much for her. Fiona, please call medical. Don't you dare. Vanessa's voice stopped everyone cold. Don't you dare pretend this is about my mental health. You've been planting stories for months, trying to paint me as unstable so no one would believe me when the truth came out. What truth? Fiona spat, finally showing her claws. The truth that you couldn't keep your husband satisfied? The truth that you're boring and basic and he needed a real woman? Fiona. Alex's tone carried a warning, but Fiona wasn't finished. You think you're some kind of victim? Please. You've been living in luxury for 7 years. You haven't worked a day in your life. You shop, you sleep, you take up space. What have you ever contributed? The words landed like blows. Vanessa felt them, felt the truth in them, felt the hollow absence where her ambitions used to live. You're right, she said quietly. Fiona blinked, momentarily thrown. What? You're right. I haven't contributed. I gave up my degree to support Alex's dreams. I gave up my career, my friends, my family. I gave up everything I was to become everything he wanted me to be. She looked at Alex. And it still wasn't enough, was it? Vanessa, answer me. Her voice cracked. 7 years. I gave you 7 years. I covered for your affairs. I smiled through your insults. I pretended not to notice when you came home smelling like other women's perfume. I did everything right. And it still wasn't enough. Silence. Somewhere in the crowd, someone was crying. The cameras had stopped flashing. Even the waiters had frozen. No, Alex said finally, his voice cold. It wasn't. Because enough for me isn't a wife who follows orders. Enough for me is a partner who enhances my life. Not someone I have to carry. Carry? A bitter laugh escaped Vanessa's throat. You've spent 7 years tearing me down, making me smaller, making me doubt everything I thought and felt and believed. That's not carrying someone, Alex. That's burying them alive. She turned to face the crowd. 400 faces, some horrified, some fascinated, all riveted. I'm sorry you had to witness this. I'm sorry your evening has been disrupted. She straightened her shoulders. But I'm not sorry for finally telling the truth. I'm not sorry for refusing to disappear quietly so my husband can pretend to be a good man. She started to walk toward the stage steps. Where do you think you're going? Alex grabbed her arm, yanking her back. We're not done here. You don't get to make a scene and then walk away like... Like what? She asked. Like I have any dignity left? Like there's anything you haven't already taken from me? You have nothing, Alex snarled, all pretense of civility gone. His fingers dug into her arm hard enough to leave marks. You understand that, right? Nothing. The prenup is ironclad. You walk out of here tonight, you're walking into nothing. No money, no home, no connections. You'll be begging for scraps within a month. Maybe, Vanessa's voice was steady, but at least I'll be free. Free? He laughed, an ugly, brutal sound. Free to do what? Go back to whatever trailer park you crawled out of? Go back to your pathetic little family who couldn't even afford to send you to a decent college? Something shifted in the room. The crowd, which had been frozen in horrified fascination, began to murmur. Even the most jaded socialites looked uncomfortable. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was watching a man dismantle a woman in real time. Alex, Theodore Winston's voice cut through the noise. Perhaps we should take this somewhere private. Stay out of this, Theodore. Alex didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked on Vanessa, blazing with 7 years of suppressed contempt finally given permission to surface. You want the truth? Here's the truth. I married you because you were easy, moldable. You had no connections, no family worth mentioning, no one to tell you that you deserve better. You were a blank slate I could shape into whatever I needed. Alex, stop! Fiona tugged at his sleeve, suddenly aware that this was spiraling beyond damage control. And you served your purpose, he continued, shaking Fiona off. You were the wholesome wife who made me look stable during the early years. But now? Now I'm building an empire. And empires require queens, not charity cases. He gestured toward Fiona without looking at her. She understands ambition. She understands power. She understands that sometimes you have to step on people to get where you're going. I understand that too, Vanessa said quietly. I just chose not to. I thought love meant lifting someone up, not stepping on them. And that's why you'll never be anything. Alex released her arm with a shove that sent her stumbling. That's why you were always just a placeholder, a warm body in my bed until something better came along. Vanessa caught herself on the podium. Her arm throbbed where he'd grabbed her. The crowd gasped at the shove. Physical violence, even minor, was beyond the pale even for Manhattan's morally flexible elite. Sir, a security guard stepped forward. I'm going to have to ask you to... This is my event. Alex's voice was ice. In my hotel, with my guests, I don't take orders from hired help. The guard hesitated, looking toward the event coordinator for guidance. And that's when they heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A rhythmic thumping that grew louder by the second. The chandeliers began to tremble. Champagne rippled in glasses. The windows rattled in their frames. What the hell is that? Someone shouted. The answer came seconds later when a blinding spotlight swept across the ballroom windows. Through the glass, descending toward the Pierre's manicured lawn like a bird of prey, was a helicopter. Not just any helicopter. A Sikorsky S-92, matte black with gold trim, the kind of aircraft typically reserved for heads of state and Fortune 10 CEOs. It touched down on the grass with surgical precision, its rotors still spinning, its spotlight trained on the ballroom like an accusation. The crowd surged toward the windows. Phones appeared everywhere, recording, streaming, capturing. Who the hell authorized a landing on our grounds? Alex shoved through the crowd, his face purple with rage. Security, get whoever that is off my property immediately. But even as he said it, even as the words left his mouth, a cold finger of unease traced down his spine. Because he didn't authorize helicopter landings. He couldn't authorize helicopter landings. He didn't have that kind of pull, which meant whoever was in that aircraft did. The helicopter's door swung open. The man who stepped out of the Sikorsky moved like someone who had never once doubted his place in the world. He was tall, 6'4", with broad shoulders that strained against a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His hair was dark, touched with silver at the temples, swept back from a face that combined their mother's aristocratic bones with their father's iron jaw. His eyes were the same shade of blue as Vanessa's, but where hers had been dimmed by years of abuse, his blazed with cold, controlled fury. Elijah Collins hadn't set foot in Manhattan in 5 years. He hadn't needed to. His empire ran itself, a private security and aerospace conglomerate that operated in 37 countries and held contracts with governments most people couldn't pronounce. He didn't attend galas. He didn't court publicity. He existed in the shadows where real power lived, the kind of power that didn't need to be displayed because everyone who mattered already knew it was there. But tonight, for his sister, he had made an exception. 4 men flanked him as he crossed the lawn. Not security guards in the traditional sense, but former Special Forces operatives who moved with the casual lethality of apex predators. They weren't there to protect Elijah. They were there to protect everyone else from what Elijah might do if provoked. The crowd parted as he approached the ballroom's French doors. Someone, a waiter perhaps, or a guest with survival instincts, opened them before he had to break stride. Elijah Collins walked into the Hartwell Industries annual benefit gala like he owned it, which, as several guests would later learn, he technically did. Collins Aerospace held the mortgage on the Pierre Hotel, a minor acquisition from a larger portfolio deal 3 years prior. The building manager hadn't even realized who his ultimate landlord was. Good evening. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It was the voice of a man who had never needed to shout, because people instinctively shut up to hear what he had to say. The crowd went silent. The cameras, which had been flashing frantically, suddenly seemed hesitant, as if the photographers sensed they were documenting something above their pay grade. Alex Hartwell stood frozen near the windows, his earlier rage replaced by confusion and the first stirrings of genuine fear. He didn't recognize this man, but he recognized power when he saw it, and this man radiated it like heat from a furnace. "Who are you?" Alex demanded, but his voice cracked slightly. "This is a private event. You can't just—" "I can." Elijah's tone was pleasant, almost conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. "I did, and I will." He scanned the room with those cold blue eyes until they found what they were looking for. Vanessa stood near the stage, one hand pressed to her bruised arm, her blue dress catching the light like a beacon. When she saw her brother, something broke open inside her, 7 years of walls crumbling in an instant. "Eli!" It came out as barely a whisper, but he heard it. His expression softened for just a moment. One heartbeat of warmth in a face carved from granite. "Little V." He crossed the ballroom in measured strides, the crowd parting before him like water. When he reached his sister, he didn't hug her. That would come later in private. Instead, he simply took her hand, examined the finger marks already purpling on her arm, and turned to face Alex Hartwell. The softness was gone. What remained was something ancient and implacable. "You touched her." It wasn't a question. Alex's survival instincts finally kicked in. He took a step back. "Look, I don't know who you are, but this is between me and my wife." "Your wife?" Elijah released Vanessa's hand and took a step toward Alex. Just one step, but Alex stumbled backward as if shoved. "Your wife is my sister, which makes what you've done to her over the past 7 years very much my business." The murmur that swept through the crowd was seismic. His sister? The nobody wife from nowhere? Sister to whoever this man was? Sister? Fiona's voice cut through, shrill with confusion. "Vanessa doesn't have a brother. She doesn't have anyone. Alex did a background check before they—" "Did he?" Elijah's gaze flickered to her, dismissive, clinical. "What exactly did that background check reveal? That she was nobody, some scholarship kid from Connecticut with dead-end parents and no—" "Fiona." Vanessa's voice was quiet but firm. "Stop. No, please." Elijah held up a hand. "Continue. I'm curious what story my sister told to protect this family from her husband's opportunism." The word landed like a grenade. Opportunism. The implication that Alex, the great Alex Hartwell, titan of industry, had been the gold digger all along. "I don't know what game you're playing," Alex snarled, rallying what remained of his composure. "But Vanessa's family was thoroughly investigated. Her father was a mid-level insurance adjuster. Her mother was a school teacher. There was no money, no connections." "Robert and Helen Miller," Elijah said calmly. "Yes, her adoptive parents. Wonderful people. Salt of the earth. They agreed to take her in when she was 6 years old, after our parents decided she deserved a normal childhood, away from the pressures of the family business." He paused, letting that sink in. Adoptive parents who raised her with love, anonymity, and the explicit understanding that when she turned 25, she could choose whether to re-enter the Collins world or remain in peaceful obscurity. "Collins?" Theodore Winston's voice rose above the murmurs. His face had gone pale. "Did you say Collins? As in Collins Aerospace?" "As in," Elijah confirmed. "Though that's just one division. Collins Holdings encompasses aerospace, defense contracting, private security, commercial real estate, and several other interests that don't appear in public filings." The silence that followed was absolute. Collins Aerospace alone was worth more than the GDP of some small countries. It was the kind of company that didn't advertise because it didn't need to. Its clients were governments, militaries, intelligence agencies. The kind of people who didn't find their contractors on Google. And Vanessa, quiet, diminished, disposable Vanessa, was apparently their princess. "This is insane," Alex said, but his voice had lost its edge. "If this were true, why would she hide it? Why would she live like—" Like a normal person? Elijah's voice hardened. Like someone who wanted to be loved for who she was rather than what she could provide? Because that's what my sister wanted, Mr. Hartwell. She wanted to be chosen. She wanted someone to see her, just her, and decide she was enough. He stepped closer to Alex, and Alex, billionaire, power broker, master of the universe, retreated another step. She met you at a coffee shop. Did you know that? She was working there between classes, trying to experience regular life, and you walked in with your big dreams and your charming smile, and she actually thought that you were different, that you saw her. I did see her, Alex protested weakly. I loved her. You saw a target. Elijah's voice was ice. A pretty girl with no apparent family to interfere, no connections to complicate things, no one to tell her she was worth more than your scraps. You saw a vacancy you could fill, a position you could cast. That's not. You moved her into your apartment within 6 months. You convinced her to drop out of school to support your dreams. You married her in a courthouse ceremony with no guests from her side because she was estranged from her family. You had her sign a prenup that your lawyers knew was borderline unconscionable, but she signed it because she trusted you, because she loved you. Each sentence landed like a hammer blow. The crowd watched in horrified fascination as the narrative they'd been sold. Successful billionaire, lucky nobody wife, inverted completely. And then, Elijah continued, once you had her locked in, you began the real work. Isolation, degradation, convincing her day by day that she was worthless without you, that her only value was as your accessory, your prop. I never... You told her not to speak to people because she'd embarrass you. You chose her clothes, her hair, her friends, what few you allowed her to have. You monitored her phone, her emails, her location. You made her believe that her family had abandoned her, when in reality, you intercepted every letter, every call, every attempt we made to reach her. Vanessa's gasp was audible. What? Elijah turned to her, and his expression softened with grief. We never stopped trying, Vanessa. Mom writes you every month. Dad calls on your birthday every year. I've sent people to check on you a dozen times, but he always had you moved or traveling or conveniently unreachable. That's... Vanessa's voice broke. He told me you didn't want me anymore, that I'd made my choice and you'd accepted it. He lied. Elijah's hands clenched at his sides. Like he's lied about everything. Like he's lied to everyone in this room tonight. The crowd's attention swung back to Alex, who looked like a man watching his kingdom crumble in real time. This is slander, he managed. I'll have my lawyers. Your lawyers. Elijah actually smiled, a cold, sharp thing that didn't reach his eyes. Yes, let's discuss lawyers. Let's discuss the prenuptial agreement that was supposed to protect you. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a slim folder, holding it up for the room to see. This is a copy of the prenup you had my sister sign. Would you like me to read the relevant clauses? How did you get that? That's privileged. Clause 7, Section 3, Elijah continued, ignoring him. In the event of infidelity by either party, the aggrieved party shall be entitled to full equitable distribution of marital assets, superseding all other provisions of this agreement. Alex's face went gray. I'm sure you remember this clause, Mr. Hartwell. You insisted on it, in fact, made quite a show of proving your commitment to fidelity. Of course, you assumed it would only ever apply to Vanessa's potential transgressions, not your own. There's no proof. 18 months of proof. Elijah withdrew a second folder. Photographs, hotel receipts, text messages, and, my personal favorite, testimony from no fewer than 7 witnesses who observed you and Ms. Price in compromising situations. Fiona made a strangled sound. Additionally, Elijah continued, his voice picking up momentum like a train, there's the small matter of the offshore accounts you've been hiding from your company's board of directors, the ones in the Caymans, and Luxembourg. And this one's creative, inside a shell corporation registered to a deceased Maltese fisherman. I don't know what you're talking about. $37 million diverted over the past 4 years. Funds that were supposed to go toward your employees' pension plans, rerouted to personal accounts you thought no one could trace. Elijah tilted his head. Did you think no one would trace them, Mr. Hartwell? Did you think your financial crimes would stay buried just because you paid the right accountants? Theodore Winston stepped forward, his face thunderous. Is this true, Alex? The pension funds? Theodore, this is obviously a setup. Because if it's true, Winston continued, his voice rising, then Concord Media will not be completing any acquisition with Hartwell Industries. In fact, I'll be recommending that the SEC conduct a full investigation before market open Monday morning. Theodore, please. Is it true? Alex looked around the room. 400 faces stared back at him, some shocked, some angry, some, like Fiona's, already calculating the fastest way to distance themselves from the wreckage. I can explain. That's not a denial. Elijah's voice was almost gentle now, the tone of a man administering a mercy killing. That's never been a denial, because you can't deny it, can you, Mr. Hartwell? You can't deny any of it. The affairs, the financial fraud, the systematic abuse of my sister. It's all true, and now everyone knows. You can't do this to me. Alex's voice cracked. Actually cracked, like a teenage boy's. Do you know who I am? I'm Alex Hartwell. I've built an empire. I have connections in every level of government. I have nothing. The word stopped Alex cold. You have nothing, Elijah repeated. By this time tomorrow, your board will have called an emergency meeting. By Wednesday, you'll be removed as CEO. By Friday, federal investigators will be requesting access to your records. And by this time next month, you'll be lucky if you're not facing criminal charges. He stepped closer, close enough that Alex could see the cold fury in his eyes. And that's before my family gets involved. That's before we decide whether to pursue civil action for the abuse of my sister. That's before we reach out to every investor, every client, every contact you've ever cultivated, and let them know exactly who they've been doing business with. Alex was shaking now, actually shaking. You can't. This isn't. I'll fight this. I have resources. You have debt. Elijah's voice was almost pitying. You have the illusion of wealth propped up by leveraged assets and borrowed credibility. Scratch the surface of your empire, Mr. Hartwell, and all you'll find is smoke and mirrors. He turned away from Alex, dismissing him completely, and extended his hand to Vanessa. Come on, little V. Mom and Dad are waiting at the airport. The jet's fueled and ready. We can be home by midnight. Vanessa stared at his hand, at her brother's face, at the escape route she had never allowed herself to imagine. I can't just leave, she whispered. My things can be replaced. The prenup is worthless now that we've documented his infidelity. My legal team will handle everything. You don't have to do anything but walk out of here. But, she looked around the room, at the crowd that had watched her humiliation, at Fiona, whose face had gone the color of curdled milk, at Alex, who looked like a man watching his own execution. 7 years of this prison, and the door was finally open. Vanessa, Elijah's voice was gentle but firm. You don't owe these people anything. You don't owe him anything. You paid your dues. You served your time. Now it's time to come home. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. You came for me. We never stopped waiting for you. He squeezed her hand. We never stopped loving you. And we never, not for 1 second, stopped believing you would find your way back. Vanessa took a shuddering breath. Then she turned to face her husband one last time. Alex Hartwell stood amid the wreckage of everything he'd built. His investors were already heading for the exits, phones pressed to ears, damage control in full swing. His mistress had disappeared, self-preservation finally overriding ambition. His security team stood uncertainly, unsure whether they should be protecting him or restraining him. And his wife, his possession, his prop, his carefully constructed illusion of a happy marriage, stood before him in a blue dress that made her look like someone he'd never met. Vanessa, his voice was hoarse. Please, we can work this out. I know I've made mistakes, but mistakes. She tasted the word. Is that what we're calling it now? I love you. I've always loved you. I got lost. The pressure, the expectations. You told me I was nothing. Her voice was steady. 30 minutes ago, In front of 400 people, you told me I was a charity case, a placeholder, a warm body in your bed. I didn't mean, you meant every word. She stepped closer, and he actually flinched. That's the thing about cruelty, Alex. It's most honest when it thinks no one important is listening. You said what you really thought because you believed I had no one in my corner. You showed me who you really are. I can change. You can't. There was no anger in her voice anymore, just a vast, exhausted certainty. Some men can. Some people look in the mirror and actually see what they've become. But you've spent your entire life building mirrors that only show you what you want to see. She reached up and unclasped the pearl necklace, her grandmother's pearls, the only thing she'd worn that he hadn't chosen. Do you know why I wore these tonight instead of the diamonds? He shook his head mute. Because my grandmother gave them to me when I was 12 years old. She told me they were for my wedding day. She told me to only give them to a man who deserved them. Vanessa smiled, a sad, broken thing. I should have listened. She pressed the pearls into his hand. Give these to Fiona, or your next wife, or whoever comes after her. She stepped back. I won't be needing them anymore. Vanessa, please. Goodbye, Alex. She turned and walked toward her brother. Each step felt lighter than the last. The crowd parted for her, not with the reluctant shuffle they'd shown Alex, but with something approaching respect. Phones lowered. Cameras stopped clicking. Even the most hardened socialites had the decency to look away. Elijah took her arm, tucking her hand into the crook of his elbow like their father used to when she was small. Ready? Yes. Her voice didn't waver. I'm ready. They walked toward the French doors, toward the helicopter waiting on the lawn, toward a life that didn't include Alex Hartwell. Vanessa! She stopped. She shouldn't have. She knew she shouldn't have. But the desperation in his voice caught her like a fishhook. What happens to me now? Alex's voice was small, childlike. The voice of a man who had never once considered consequences because consequences were for other people. What am I supposed to do? Vanessa looked back over her shoulder. One last look at the man she had loved, the man she had sacrificed everything for, the man who had tried to destroy her. That's not my problem anymore. She walked out into the night. The helicopter blades were already spinning. The Sikorsky S-92 lifted off from the Pierre's lawn at 10:17 p.m., climbing above the Manhattan skyline like a bird escaping a cage. Vanessa sat in one of the leather seats, a cashmere blanket draped over her shoulders, a glass of water untouched in her hand. Through the window, she watched the city shrink. The towers that had been her prison, the streets she had walked in careful, controlled patterns, the life that had never really been hers. Here, Elijah settled into the seat across from her, holding out a satellite phone. Mom's been waiting. Vanessa's hand trembled as she took it. Eli, I don't know what to say to her. It's been 7 years. I just disappeared. You didn't disappear. You were taken. His voice was firm but kind. And she knows that. Dad knows that. We all know that. The only person who doesn't know it is you. She stared at the phone, at the number already dialed, at the weight of 7 years sitting heavy on her chest. What if she's angry? She's not. What if she's disappointed? She's not. What if... Vanessa. Elijah leaned forward, taking her free hand. Do you remember what Mom said to you the night before your wedding? The night you called to tell her you weren't inviting her? Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. She remembered. God, she remembered. She said she would always leave a light on. She has, every night for 7 years. The porch light at the Connecticut house, it's never been off. His grip tightened. She's not angry, little V. She's just been waiting. We all have. With shaking fingers, Vanessa pressed call. 1 ring. 2. Hello. Catherine Collins' voice was exactly as Vanessa remembered. Low and warm, with the faint remnants of a Boston accent that 3 decades of high society hadn't quite erased. The voice that had read her bedtime stories. The voice that had sung off-key lullabies. The voice that had promised, the night she left for the Miller family, that this wasn't goodbye. Just see you later. Mom. The silence on the line was absolute. Then, Vanessa? Baby, is that you? It's me, Mom. The tears came freely now, streaming down her cheeks, dripping onto the cashmere blanket. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't you dare apologize. Catherine's voice cracked, but there was steel beneath it. Don't you dare, sweetheart. You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. I should have called. I should have. You're calling now. That's all that matters. Are you okay? Are you safe? Elijah said he was bringing you home, but he wouldn't tell us anything else. I'm okay, Mom. I'm on the helicopter now. Eli's here. I'm coming home. The sound that came through the phone was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Your father's already pacing. He's been pacing since Elijah called 2 hours ago. I think he's worn a groove in the floor. A watery laugh. He wanted to come with Eli, you know. I had to physically restrain him. Told him you didn't need both Collins' men descending on Manhattan like avenging angels. One was enough, Vanessa said, looking at her brother. One was more than enough. That's my boy. Pride and love intermingled in Catherine's voice. He's been planning this for months, you know, ever since he found out about what that man was doing. He's had people watching, waiting for the right moment. I know. He told me. We wanted to come sooner. So many times we wanted to just show up and take you back. But Eli said we had to wait. He said you had to be ready to leave, or you'd just go back. Vanessa closed her eyes. She thought of all the times she'd almost called, all the times she'd stared at the flip phone in her hiding place and convinced herself that it was better this way, that her family was better off without her, that she wasn't worth the trouble. I almost wasn't ready, she admitted, even tonight. Even after everything he said, part of me wanted to apologize, to make it better, to go back to the way things were. That's what abuse does, sweetheart. It rewires your brain, makes you think the cage is the only safe place. Catherine's voice hardened. But you're out now, and you're never going back. Do you understand me? Never. I understand. Good. Now, I have approximately 3 hours before you land, and I intend to spend every minute of it stress baking. Your father is handling the lawyers, your grandmother is handling the press, and I am handling the chocolate chip cookies. Any requests? Despite everything, despite the tears, despite the exhaustion, despite 7 years of hell, Vanessa laughed. Peanut butter cookies, the ones with the Hershey's kisses. Consider it done. A pause. I love you, Vanessa Marie. I never stopped, not for 1 second. I love you too, Mom. She ended the call and sat in silence for a long moment, the phone pressed to her chest like a talisman. Better? Elijah asked. Getting there. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since the gala. Eli, how did you know? About all of it? The affairs, the financial fraud, the everything? Her brother's expression flickered. Do you really want to know? Yes. He sighed, settling back in his seat. 5 years ago, right after your 3rd anniversary, Dad got a feeling. You know how he is. Paranoid about everyone, especially people who marry into the family. Even when you didn't want anything to do with us, he kept tabs, made sure you were safe. He knew? For 5 years? He knew something was wrong. We all did. The way you sounded on the phone during the few calls that got through, the way you looked in the photos, always thinner, always sadder, always standing a little behind him. Elijah's jaw tightened. But we didn't have proof. And more importantly, we didn't have your permission. We couldn't just extract you. Extract me? I'm not a hostage. Weren't you? The question hung in the air. I started building the case 3 years ago, Elijah continued. Hired investigators, forensic accountants, digital surveillance specialists, everything legal, mostly. I wanted to make sure that when you were ready to leave, you'd have everything you needed to bury him. And if I was never ready, then the file would have sat in my safe forever. He met her eyes. We weren't going to force you, Vanessa. That's not who we are. But we were never going to stop preparing for the day you wanted out. Vanessa absorbed this. 3 years of work, 3 years of waiting, 3 years of her family building an escape route she didn't know existed. The prenup, she said slowly. You mentioned the infidelity clause. But Alex's lawyers wrote that contract. Why would they include something that could be used against him? Elijah smiled. a thin, sharp expression that reminded her of their father. They didn't. His lawyers submitted a draft that protected him completely, but that draft had to go through a notary. And that notary happened to be, let's say, sympathetic to our concerns. You bribed a notary to change my prenup? I persuaded a notary to ensure my sister's rights were protected. He spread his hands. Is that a crime? Probably. Will it matter? No. The document was signed by both parties. It's legally binding. And the infidelity clause makes it very, very clear who's entitled to what. Which is? Everything. Elijah's smile widened. Under the modified terms, Alex's infidelity triggers a full equitable distribution. Combined with the financial fraud, which will result in massive fines and likely prison time, you're looking at controlling interest in Hartwell Industries within 6 months. Vanessa blinked. I don't want his company. Then sell it, donate it, burn it to the ground and salt the earth. Elijah shrugged. The point is, you'll have options. You'll have resources. You'll have power. The kind of power that means you never have to depend on anyone like him ever again. I don't want power, Eli. I just want my life back. I know. His voice softened. And you'll have it. But first, we need to make sure he can never hurt you again. That means finishing what we started tonight. That means lawyers and depositions and probably a very public divorce proceeding. Are you ready for that? Vanessa looked out the window. The Manhattan skyline was a fading glow on the horizon now, the helicopter carrying her north toward Connecticut, toward home, toward the life she had abandoned 7 years ago. I don't know, she admitted, but I'm going to try. That's all anyone can ask. Elijah reached over and squeezed her hand. Now get some rest. Mom's cooking enough food to feed an army, and you're going to need your strength. Vanessa closed her eyes and, for the first time in 7 years, slept without dreaming of cages. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in destruction. Monday morning, the Wall Street Journal broke the story of Alex Hartwell's alleged financial improprieties. By noon, Hartwell Industries stock had dropped 40%. By market close, trading had been halted pending SEC investigation. Tuesday, the New York Post ran a front-page spread featuring grainy photos of Alex and Fiona entering a hotel together, time-stamped to 3 different occasions over the past year. The headline read, "Billion Cheat, Hartwell's Double Life Exposed." Wednesday, Fiona Price held a press conference tearfully claiming that she had been manipulated by her powerful boss and was, in fact, a victim. She announced plans to write a tell-all book and was already in negotiations with 3 publishers. Thursday, Alex Hartwell was served with divorce papers at his temporary residence, a suite at the Four Seasons, since the Pierre had politely but firmly asked him to leave. The papers outlined Vanessa's claims under the modified prenuptial agreement and included a preliminary asset inventory that ran to 47 pages. Friday, federal investigators executed a search warrant at Hartwell Industries headquarters. Alex was photographed being escorted from the building by FBI agents, his hands not yet cuffed, but his future clearly shackled. By the weekend, every major news outlet in the country was running some version of the same story: the rise and fall of Alex Hartwell, the billionaire who thought he was untouchable. And in a colonial mansion on 12 acres in Greenwich, Connecticut, Vanessa Collins sat in her childhood bedroom and watched her old life burn. 1 month later, the federal courthouse in Manhattan was a circus. Press vans lined the streets. Photographers jockeyed for position on the steps. Legal analysts provided breathless commentary for the cable networks. Inside courtroom 4B, Alex Hartwell sat at the defendant's table, looking like a man who had aged 20 years in 30 days. His suit was rumpled. His hair was graying at a rate that defied biology. The confident, commanding presence that had once filled boardrooms now seemed to have collapsed in on itself like a dying star. His legal team, reduced from 12 lawyers to 3 after the others abandoned ship, shuffled papers and avoided eye contact. Across the aisle, Vanessa Collins sat with her own attorneys, a team of 7, led by the formidable Margaret Chen, a woman who had once successfully sued a sitting congressman and gotten him removed from office. Vanessa didn't look at Alex. She hadn't looked at him once since entering the courtroom. She was wearing blue again, a simple navy dress, modest and elegant. Her hair was down, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked peaceful, whole, like someone who had finally found solid ground after years of drowning. All rise. Judge Patricia Hammond entered the courtroom with the no-nonsense stride of someone who had seen every variety of human misbehavior and was thoroughly unimpressed by all of it. Be seated. She settled behind the bench, adjusting her reading glasses. We're here today for the preliminary hearing in the matter of Collins versus Hartwell, case number 2024 CV 8847. This hearing will determine the validity of the prenuptial agreement and establish grounds for divorce proceedings. She looked up, her gaze sweeping the courtroom. Before we begin, I want to make something very clear. This is a court of law, not a media circus. I will not tolerate grandstanding, dramatic outbursts, or any attempt to try this case in the press. Anyone who violates this directive will be held in contempt. Is that understood? Murmurs of assent from both tables. Good. Mrs. Chen, you may proceed with your opening statement. Margaret Chen rose with the fluid grace of a predator who had spotted wounded prey. Thank you, Your Honor. The facts of this case are straightforward. My client, Vanessa Collins, was systematically abused, isolated, and controlled by the respondent, Alex Hartwell, over the course of their 7-year marriage. Mr. Hartwell engaged in multiple extramarital affairs, financially exploited marital assets for personal gain, and deliberately prevented my client from maintaining contact with her family. She paused, letting the words settle. The prenuptial agreement signed by both parties contains a clear infidelity clause. Mr. Hartwell violated this clause repeatedly and without remorse. Under the terms of the agreement, my client is entitled to full equitable distribution of all marital assets. Objection. Alex's lead attorney, a tired-looking man named Gerald Fitch, rose half-heartedly. The validity of the prenuptial agreement is precisely what this hearing is meant to determine. Counsel is assuming facts not yet in evidence. Sustained. Judge Hammond's voice was dry. Mrs. Chen, please confine yourself to matters that will be proven rather than assuming they already have been. Of course, Your Honor. Chen smiled, a shark smile. Allow me to rephrase. We intend to prove that the respondent violated the terms of the prenuptial agreement. We have extensive documentation, witness testimony, and digital evidence supporting these claims. We are confident that once Your Honor reviews this evidence, the path forward will be clear. She sat down. Judge Hammond turned to the defense table. Mr. Fitch? Gerald Fitch rose with the enthusiasm of a man approaching his own execution. Your Honor, my client categorically denies the allegations of infidelity and financial impropriety. The so-called evidence presented by the petitioner was obtained through questionable means and should be. Mr. Fitch, Judge Hammond's voice cut through like a blade. I've reviewed the preliminary filings. The evidence in question was obtained through legal channels, including subpoenas and discovery requests approved by this court. If you're suggesting that lawfully obtained evidence should be excluded because it's inconvenient for your client, I suggest you reconsider your strategy. Fitch deflated visibly. No, Your Honor. I simply meant to note that my client disputes the interpretation of noted. Please continue. The hearing proceeded for another 2 hours. Witnesses were called. Documents were entered into evidence. Alex's attorneys made increasingly desperate objections, most of which were overruled. Through it all, Vanessa sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on some middle distance. She didn't react when the photographs of Alex and Fiona were displayed. She didn't flinch when the financial records revealed the scope of his theft. She didn't cry when her own medical records were presented, records showing repeated visits for anxiety and insomnia and accidental bruises. She had cried enough. She was done crying for Alex Hartwell. At 4:47 p.m., Judge Hammond called for a recess. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9, she announced. I've heard enough today to form preliminary conclusions, but I want to review the financial documentation in detail before issuing any rulings. She paused, looking directly at Alex. Mr. Hartwell, I strongly suggest you use this evening to consult with your counsel about potential settlement options. Based on what I've seen today, I don't believe continued litigation will serve your interests. It was as close to a verdict as a preliminary hearing could get. Alex's face crumpled. Outside the courtroom, the hallway was a gauntlet of cameras and shouted questions. Vanessa, how do you feel about today's proceedings? Mrs. Collins, Is it true your family is worth more than your husband's? Vanessa, will you seek criminal charges? She walked through them without responding, her security team, provided by Elijah's firm, clearing a path with practiced efficiency. Margaret Chen fielded questions on her behalf, offering carefully worded statements that said everything and nothing. At the end of the hallway near the elevators, a familiar figure waited. Vanessa stopped. Fiona Price looked nothing like the confident, predatory woman who had climbed the stage at the gala. Her hair was lank, unwashed. Her designer clothes had been replaced by a shapeless sweater and jeans. Her face, without its armor of makeup, was pale and drawn. Vanessa, her voice was hoarse. Can we talk? Please. The security team moved to intervene, but Vanessa held up a hand. It's fine. Give us a minute. They retreated to a respectful distance, close enough to respond if needed, far enough to allow privacy. What do you want, Fiona? I wanted to... She swallowed. I wanted to apologize. For what I said at the gala, for what I did, for all of it. Okay. Fiona blinked, thrown by the neutral response. That's it? Just okay. What did you expect? That I would scream at you? Call you names? Tell you what a terrible person you are? Vanessa shook her head. I don't have the energy for that, Fiona. And honestly, you're not worth it. The words landed like a slap. I know I'm not. Fiona's voice cracked. I know I was horrible. I thought he loved me. I thought we had something real. You thought you were special. Vanessa's voice was almost gentle. You thought you were different from all the others, the one who would finally be enough. Fiona nodded miserably. You weren't. I wasn't either. That's the thing about men like Alex. Nobody's ever enough because the emptiness is inside them. They keep consuming people, thinking the next one will fill the void, but it never does. It never will. How do you not hate me? Vanessa considered the question. I did for a while. When I first found out about you, I hated you so much I couldn't breathe. But then I realized something. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You didn't do this to me. He did. You were just the weapon he used. And I don't blame weapons. I blame the people who wield them. Tears streamed down Fiona's face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. Vanessa reached out and, surprising them both, took Fiona's hand. Here's some free advice. From one of Alex's victims to another. Get therapy. Real therapy, not the performative kind. Figure out why you were willing to accept so little from someone who should have given you so much more. And then, this is the important part, learn to give it to yourself. How? I don't know yet. I'm still figuring it out. Vanessa released her hand and stepped back. But I do know that standing in this hallway, still orbiting around Alex's destruction, isn't going to help either of us. We need to build our own lives now. Lives that have nothing to do with him. Fiona wiped her eyes. Do you think that's possible? After everything? I think it has to be. Because the alternative is letting him win. And I'm done letting Alex Hartwell win. She turned and walked toward the elevators, leaving Fiona standing alone in the hallway. The doors opened. Her security team filed in around her. And just before the doors closed, she saw Alex emerge from the courtroom, his lawyers flanking him like pallbearers. Their eyes met. In his, she saw desperation, fury, and, buried beneath everything else, the dawning recognition that he had finally met a consequence he couldn't charm, buy, or manipulate his way out of. In hers, he saw nothing at all. The doors closed. Vanessa Collins went home. The Collins Aerospace Global Headquarters occupied 47 floors of a glass tower in downtown Hartford. It was the kind of building that made other buildings feel inadequate. All clean lines and impossible angles. A monument to human ambition rendered in steel and light. On the 47th floor, in an office that overlooked the entire city, Vanessa Collins sat behind a desk that had once belonged to her grandfather. She was 33 now. The haunted look had faded from her eyes, replaced by something sharper, more focused. She had cut her hair to shoulder length. She had stopped wearing the muted colors Alex had preferred and had discovered a fondness for bold reds and electric blues. She had also discovered a talent she never knew she had: business. After the divorce, which had concluded with a settlement that gave her controlling interest in what remained of Hartwell Industries. She had done exactly what Elijah suggested. She sold it. Every division, every asset, every piece of the empire Alex had built on her back. The money after taxes, legal fees, and charitable donations came to just over $300 million. She had donated a third of it to domestic violence organizations. Another third went into a trust for her future children. The final third she had invested in Collins Aerospace, buying her way onto the board of directors. Now, 2 years later, she was the company's executive vice president of strategic development. She had earned the position not through her family name, but through 18-hour days, innovative thinking, and a relentless drive that seemed to have awakened the moment she stepped out of the Pierre Hotel. "Ms. Collins?" Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your 2 o'clock is here." Vanessa checked her calendar. The meeting was with a potential acquisition target, a small aerospace startup with promising technology and a cash flow problem. Routine. "Send them in." The door opened, and Vanessa's world tilted. The man who walked in was not the confident titan who had once terrorized her. He was gaunt, gray, stooped. He walked with a cane, a memento, she had heard, of a confrontation with a fellow inmate who had taken exception to white-collar criminals. His suit, once impeccably tailored, hung on his diminished frame like a flag of surrender. Alex Hartwell looked at his ex-wife across 20 feet of polished hardwood, and his eyes filled with tears. "Vanessa." She didn't rise. She didn't move. She simply sat behind her grandfather's desk and looked at the man who had once held her entire world in his hands and crushed it. "Alex." Her voice was neutral, professional. "This is unexpected." "I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." He broke off, swallowing hard. "I didn't know how else to see you. Your people won't take my calls. Your family's lawyers have made it very clear that any contact would result in legal action. But I had to." "You had to what?" He stood there trembling, diminished, a shadow of the man who had once told her she was nothing. "I had to apologize." Vanessa considered this. She pressed her intercom. "Claire, please hold my calls for the next 15 minutes. "Of course, Miss Collins." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit down, Alex, before you fall down." He collapsed into the chair with the gratitude of someone whose legs had been threatening to give out. Vanessa waited. "I've had a lot of time to think," Alex said finally. 18 months in federal prison gives you nothing but time. And I've gone over everything, every choice I made, every terrible thing I did." He looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. "I was a monster, Vanessa. I know that now. I knew it then, somewhere deep down. But I couldn't. You didn't want to," she finished for him, "because being a monster got you what you wanted." "Yes." The word was barely a whisper. "Yes, exactly. And I told myself it was justified, that I was building something important, that the ends justified the means. But they didn't. They never did." He leaned forward, his hands clasped together as if in prayer. "I destroyed you. I took a brilliant, beautiful, loving woman, and I systematically dismantled her until there was nothing left. And for what? For my ego, for my image, for a few more zeros in a bank account that the federal government has now seized anyway." Vanessa listened. She didn't speak. "After the trial, after the sentencing, I kept waiting for the anger to hit. I kept expecting to blame you, to blame your brother, to blame anyone but myself. But it never came. All I felt was shame, this crushing, suffocating shame that I had wasted my life on things that didn't matter and destroyed the one thing that did." "And what was that?" "Us." His voice broke. "You. The life we could have had if I hadn't been so blind, so greedy, so goddamn certain that I was the only thing that mattered." He was crying now. Real tears, ugly tears, the kind of tears that can't be faked. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I don't deserve it. I know that. But I needed you to know. I needed to say to your face that I'm sorry, that I see now clearly what I did, and that I will spend whatever time I have left on this earth trying to become someone who wouldn't recognize the man I used to be." Silence. Vanessa looked at her ex-husband. at the wreckage of the man who had once made her feel like less than nothing. She thought about all the nights she had cried herself to sleep. She thought about the bruises she had hidden, the lies she had told, the years she had lost. She thought about the woman she had been before Alex and the woman she had become after. "Alex," she said finally, "I'm going to tell you something that I want you to really hear." He looked up, desperate hope flickering in his eyes. "I forgive you." The words hung in the air. "Not for your sake," she continued. "For mine. Carrying hatred around is exhausting, and I've wasted enough of my life on you already. So yes, I forgive you. I release you. Whatever debt you feel you owe me, consider it paid." His face crumpled with something like relief. "But," she said, and the words stopped him cold, "forgiveness isn't reconciliation. Forgiveness doesn't mean I want you in my life. It doesn't mean we'll be friends or acquaintances or even people who nod at each other across a room." She stood, and even though he was taller, even though he had once towered over her, she felt like the giant. "You asked me once what I was going to do with my freedom. Do you remember that? On the stage after your speech, you asked what I would do without you to carry me." He nodded miserably. "Here's what I did." She gestured at the office, at the skyline beyond, at the empire she had helped build. "I became someone, not because of you and not despite you, just myself. The person I always could have been if I hadn't spent 7 years convinced I was worthless." She walked around the desk, stopping a few feet from his chair. "You get to walk out of this office today, Alex. You get to go back to whatever life you've built from the wreckage. You get to have your second chance, your redemption arc, your journey of personal growth. And I genuinely hope you make something of it." She leaned down, her eyes level with his. "But you don't get to be part of mine. Not ever again." She straightened. "Claire will validate your parking. Goodbye, Alex." He sat there for a long moment, absorbing the finality of it. Then slowly, painfully, he rose to his feet. "Goodbye, Vanessa." His voice was barely audible. "Thank you for listening." He turned and walked toward the door. His hand was on the handle when she spoke again. "Alex?" He paused, looked back. "The anger you were waiting for? The blame?" She smiled, a small, private smile. "It never came for me either. I just moved on. And honestly, that's the best revenge I could have asked for." He nodded once, his eyes bright with tears. Then he left. Vanessa stood alone in her office, looking out at the city she now helped shape. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. She thought about the girl she had been, young, hopeful, desperate to be loved. She thought about the woman she had become, strong, capable, whole. She thought about all the things she had lost and all the things she had gained. Her phone buzzed, a text from Elijah. "Mom's making your peanut butter cookies. Family dinner at 7. Don't be late." She smiled. 7 years ago, she had walked into a nightmare, convinced she was marrying her prince. Today, she had walked out of that nightmare and into a life she had built with her own hands. The helicopter had landed. The brother had come. The billionaire had fallen. And Vanessa Collins, daughter, sister, executive, survivor, had risen. And that, my friends, is the story of how a billionaire's arrogance destroyed everything he had built, and how the woman he tried to erase became the architect of her own extraordinary life. Alex Hartwell learned the most expensive lesson there is, that power built on cruelty is always borrowed time. You can silence someone for years, but you can't silence them forever. And when they finally speak, the truth tends to echo. Vanessa's story reminds us that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it waits. Sometimes it survives, quietly in the shadows, until the moment it can step into the light. And that moment of emergence, it's worth every dark night that came before. So what do you think? Was Vanessa's final response to Alex, forgiveness without reconciliation, the right choice? Or should she have let him walk away with nothing, the way he once tried to do to her? And that brother Elijah, did his dramatic entrance change everything? Or was Vanessa always going to find her way back to herself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your perspectives on these stories. If this tale of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate triumph moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm share these stories with more people who need to hear them. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new upload. We post dramatic stories of karma and justice every week. Thanks for watching. And remember, be careful how you treat the people you think are beneath you, because someday they might be the ones looking down.